So as I'm stood here, sorting out my gear, getting ready to go out and do some street photography, testing out the 85 to see what it's like since the firmware update, it occurs to me that there's only really 3 sorts of street photography, in my opinion. Now, I know there's lots of niches like architecture, things like that, but I think every street photographer can have their broad scope of their work fitted into 3 categories. So I thought I'd talk to you about those categories and see if you agree or if you think I'm totally off the piste here. So the first category, and probably the one that we think of most, is the one that I would put somebody like Cartier-Bresson in. Moment chasers. People who are chasing a moment, an incident, a time, something that doesn't happen very often, or an interesting juxtaposition, an interesting coincidence, an interesting scene, something unusual. Cartier-Bresson, the decisive moment, is probably the most famous example of that. But we do have a few other photographers to consider when we think about this sort of thing. So when I think of people that I would call chasers of moments, I think of people like Jill Freedman, Cartier-Bresson, I've already mentioned, Nick Turpin in the UK, Ronya Galka in the UK. Actually, she's German, but I think she operates mainly in the UK. Robert Doisneau, I hope I pronounced his name correctly. These guys, they're out in the street and their priority is to find a moment, something that's happening, something that only happens once in a while, something unusual, a juxtaposition, something amusing, something just interesting visually, something worth recording for posterity. Now, I think that we're all looking for that sort of thing. Now, that certainly applies to me. When I go out to do street photography, that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm aspiring to. That's what I'm hoping for. However, I'm also going to be looking to shoot the other sorts of street photography too. The reason for that is fairly simple. You can go out all day, 8 hours, 10 hours easily and never catch a moment worth having. Okay, so another sort of street photographer that we talk about, and probably the most trendy and most popular at the moment, particularly amongst the Instagram crowd, and you probably see examples of this work. I think Sean Tucker exemplifies this very well, and Gareth Danks, both YouTube photographers who do this very well, but most famously, it's Farnan's style. The chaser of light is in the urban environment looking for opportunities where the light and the shadow play in a nice way that allows them to create something beautiful, something aesthetically pleasing. It doesn't always show off the landscape, doesn't always show off the urban environment, doesn't always necessarily show the people, and this can be quite an appealing style for those who want to protect people's anonymity when they're doing street photography, because you can often hide the person in shadow. This is something that I look for when I'm out shooting street photography, but it's not my priority. It's not what I'm searching for. As I said before, in the ideal world, I'm the chaser of a moment. If you're interested in looking up chasers of light, there's a couple of people that I think you should have a look at. You should have a look at Linda Wisdom in the UK, Nico Goodden, not sure how you pronounce that, but Goodden. We have Steve Coleman in the UK, he shoots some wonderful stuff in Liverpool. And we have Callum Cole, who you'll only find on Instagram, quite young, brilliant stuff really. Shoots in colour on night time, very aesthetic, very, very good use of light. I think it's awesome stuff. So that's the chasers of light. And the third type of photographer, street photographer that is what I would call the documentarians. Now, I think we're all a bit of documentarian when we go out there into the world with our cameras. Whether you're a chaser of light or you're a chaser of moments, you've got the opportunity to document the city and its surroundings when you're there, the town or the urban environment. Now, documentarians, I think, are often not appreciated in their own lifetime. They set out to photograph the mundane, the usual, the things that are always there, the things that are disappearing, the things that are just arriving. And it's only when time turns and those things are no longer there, they're no longer mundane, and they're no longer unusual, that we start to appreciate what was there and what was gone. There's an element of nostalgia there, I think, with the documentarians. When we talk about documentarians, I'm talking about people like Lee Friedlander, Eugene Atget, probably the first, and I know I pronounced his name wrong, it's probably the first documentarian that comes to mind. Then we have like the Helen Levitt, Walker Evans, Garry Winogrand, of course, extremely famous, Simon Buckley, John Farnan. So the Documentarian, they're basically out to record history, to document things, keep a record of what there was. And I think for me personally, I shoot a lot of this sort of street photography, just when I'm out and about, because it's not necessarily easy, because you still want to compose a beautiful image that will be appreciated by people. But what it is it's something that you can do all the time. You're not waiting on something happening. You're not waiting on the light falling in a certain way, although of course you might want the light to be a certain type, but you're not waiting for the perfect incident. But of course you can blend it together by waiting for something to pass the thing that you're documenting. Of course you can. Now I think most of us are a mix of all three of these sort of photographers. So there was actually one famous photographer that I thought of who doesn't really fit into any of my three categories, and that's Bruce Gilden. If you haven't heard of Bruce Gilden, do a bit of Googling. You'll see he's the guy who leaps out in front of people in New York with a camera and a flash, scares the bejesus out of them, gets really nice and close and tight and into their personal space to create a reaction from them. It's uncomfortably close, and if I'm being honest, and if I was being difficult, I would say maybe he's not really a street photographer at all. Definitely an artist, and it's definitely an art form, but he's not capturing any sort of candid moment. He's capturing somebody going about their daily life, and he's creating a reaction from them. But then, where do you draw the line? I stop people in the street sometimes and ask them if I can take their portrait. I call these street portraits rather than street photography. So, there's always going to be some blurring. Don't get hung up on boxes. Boxes are for moving, not for putting people in. Take care. See you soon.